Welcome to Community Taking Action, ABCD's program highlighting people and organizations doing great things in and around the Boston area. Today, we are joined by someone who's doing great work in the community, the president of the Boston branch of the NAACP, Michael Curry. Thank you for joining the show.
Glad to be here. My pleasure.
There's a lot to talk about. Talk a little bit about the history of the branch.
So it's interesting when you think about the history of the larger organization, NAACP. 1908, Springfield race riot. A small, relatively small town. Two black men were accused of attacks on white women, separate attacks. One is proven to be false, sort of like the movie Rosewood that many people remember. The white townspeople mobilized and marched down to the prison to lynch two men, the two black men. The sheriff and a white businessman moved them 65 miles down the road and saved their lives. The mob then turned on the rest of the community and killed, I think it's the largest number of white citizens killed in a race riot in the history of this country. That led to a group of very conscientious white and black citizens like W.B. Du Bois, Mary White Ovington, William English Walling, the Garrison family that we know here well in New England, got together and organized what would become the National Negro Committee and then the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
And how would you describe the role of the organization in society?
One is, if you think about our mission to eliminate discrimination and to deal with the vestiges of race and racism in our society, then the relevance speaks for itself. And unfortunately, we have to sort of relitigate that case over our history. And I can guarantee you, even though it's been a recent conversation, it's probably been a conversation over the years about whether we were relevant, whether we were effective. The bottom line is that's an easy case to win. When you look at the fact that there's still too many people of color, particularly African Americans in prison, some prison populations up to 60%, that our unemployment rate is 2 or 3 times as high no matter where you look in this country, that we're dying of almost every disease at a higher rate, and it's not just because we don't eat well, that you look at the economic development in the communities that we come from. If you look at the Ferguson situation and Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and the DJ Henry out of New York, there are so many cases and so many arguments to why we're still needed. And we are, as we affectionately say in the NAACP, we're the biggest, the baddest, the boldest, the most discussed and the most cussed organization in the history of this country. So the work is still there. If you think we're post-racial, then you're delusional, because the facts don't bear that out. So we're still needed, and there's still much more work to do.
If I were to look at the Boston branch website or talk to its members, what is happening today that people should know about?
We have a multi-pronged strategy to try to deal with the issues that we have in our community. We have about 21 active committees, or 21 committees we could have. So it touches on every part of our life: economic development, labor and industry, housing, education, healthcare, veterans affairs, you name it, and there's a committee for it. Of the 21 we could have, we're at 17, which is a tremendous amount of work to do for an all-volunteer organization. So I got 17 people who lead committees, have to have at least 5 to 7 members on that committee who have to meet monthly and have an agenda and get results. And they treat it like their paid job. At least that's what I request of them, is to treat it like their paid job. We're not paid. Even as officers and executive committee, we're not paid. So we focus on those issues. And I think, quite frankly, we'll have a great story to tell about education. The work that we're doing in education is speaking to the fact that our kids don't get the quality education. And when you graduate from many Boston public schools, you can't compete against BB&N, Buckingham Brown and Nichols, or Newton North or Newton South. And of course, that has an impact on the trajectory of the rest of your life. If you should be a scientist or a doctor or a mathematician, you name it. The school you went to might impact your ability to achieve and build wealth. We're in that conversation. We're talking about who the next school superintendent should be, what skills they should have, what cultural competence they should have. We're dealing with the disciplinary issues and the alternative approaches to discipline. Instead of expelling and suspending young people, what are we doing to make sure they stay engaged and do not drop out? We're engaged in a conversation over the elimination of buses. And for the average parent, they think, well, New York, other cities, they could take a bus to school. But the reality is we've accepted the fact that our kids walk through, oftentimes, violent neighborhoods to and from school. And the city was moving to eliminate 7th and 8th grade yellow buses. and we fought that. And where it is now is that the 7th graders are still on the yellow buses, the 8th graders are on the T, but you can get a waiver as a parent. That's the work of this NAACP.
Talk a little bit about what you see as issues of gentrification or pre-gentrification or something that resembles gentrification, if that's too strong a word.
We use a phrase in the NAACP that talks about politics, and the phrase is, if you're not at the table, you're on the table, or you're on the agenda. And it manifests itself in many ways. One is in terms of housing and rental. The reality is that many of our communities, we don't own property.
Right.
So when we took all of our young people to New York, to the Martin Luther King housing projects, and we had a tour of Harlem, and the tour guide said, hey, that's my mother up on that top floor, and she's waving at us. And he said, look across the street, those are $1 million condos. She won't be here in a few years because they're gonna kick them out of here. And the reality is, if you wanna make a difference in terms of how your community develops over time, own, buy. That was the message he sent those kids back to Roxbury and Dorchester and Mattapan with. The reality is not too many of us do own, do buy. And the few of us who were able to get in through that predatory lending process that got homes now are default on those loans, and many of them have lost those homes.
You took a group of young people to New York. So let's talk about the involvement of the branch with young people. There seems to have been a lot of mobilization, energy, engagement of young people. Talk about all of that.
You, Christine Wood, and myself were some of the younger folks, and I always preference young, and NAACP is under 50.
Yes.
So we're not talking about 15, we're talking about under 50 in the NAACP. And the reality was, you and the three of us were the younger folks sitting around a table and trying to push the agenda to get younger people involved. When I was able to run and become president, my #1 mission is, you can fight mass incarceration, you can fight stop and frisk policies, but what's the long-term plan?
Right.
And sometimes as African Americans and African American activists, we're focused on the first quarter, but we're not focused on the fourth quarter.
Right.
To me, young people are the fourth quarter.
Right.
Do they know their history? Do they know their culture? Do they know who Mel King is and what he did to get us to this point? Do they know Doris Bunty? So our first mission when we took office in 2011 was to bring young people in, to give them a grounding in our history and our culture and our struggle. And then the next step was to employ them. So we give young people a job. We hire 25 kids for the summer, and they do social justice, civil rights work for the summer, and they make a difference. Then we also get to take them places. We took them to Harlem for the Great Debate, where they saw Harvard and Howard debate our issues. We took them to many other places across the country, to the state legislature, to City Hall. To me, those are the deeply impactful fourth quarter efforts of the NAACP, because they'll be the ones sitting being interviewed by you or whoever is interviewing on your show in the future, and they'll have a grounding and a presence around our issues.
So how can someone reach the branch? You got a phone number and an email and a website, I'm sure.
Give us a call, 617-427-9494 is the branch number. Our website is www.bostonnaacp.org. And we are very much looking for volunteers. You know, we're an all-volunteer organization. If you think we should be on an issue, we need your body in the office to help us do that work.
You mean you don't get paid?
We don't get paid.
And you're looking for more people to come who don't get paid?
More people to come who don't get paid. And we'll treat it like a paid job.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, I really want to thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, Eric.
That concludes our program for today. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you've missed any episodes, you can get them on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on Community Taking Action. I am Eric Misher, your host. Until next time.